Okay, today we're going to take a look at section 12I, which is cumulative frequency graphs. And I'm actually, well, let's just talk about it first and then we'll look at that first example. So, a cumulative frequency graph. So, we know what cumulative frequencies are. It is adding all those frequencies and showing the total amount, but we can use these by plotting them on a graph. And then when we put a curve with it, it is going to be a really easy way for us to find different percentiles. So, like finding the median, finding your Q1, your Q3, or really even like 40th percent of the data. It's a really easy way for us to follow the curve. So, our first example that we're going to do here we have the women's marathon of the 2008 Olympics, and we have our finishing times and how many runners actually fell within that time. So between 2 hours and 26 minutes and 2 hours and 40 or 28 minutes, we had eight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the first thing it's asking us to do is construct a cumulative frequency distribution table. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to go to I've already done this, and I feel like it might be easier. So if you guys want, just follow my cursor. Whoops. Versus I don't know why it's doing that. There. Okay, so the first thing I did is I rewrote the table that was given. So this first two columns is just the table that we just saw. And then I have my cumulative frequency on this third column. So 8, and then when I add 3, I get 11. At 9, I get 20. At 11, I get 31, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the next thing is to actually make your graph. And you may, on an EA, have to do this. So you want to make sure that you understand how to do it by hand as well. So I have down here is my times on the x-axis, and then on the y-axis, I have my actual cumulative frequency. And I'm going to zoom a little bit, maybe see if that helps. Okay, so what I did, I also have a key, so I didn't have to write 2 hours and 24 minutes. I converted it all to minutes. So 144 minutes is really 2 hours and 24 minutes. So this is all by minutes instead of hours and minutes. And then just remember, if we want to start at a higher number, we can show that our axis is broken up by doing that to our axis. And then you can just start at the 144 instead of putting 0 to 144 on the axis as well. Okay, so here's what we do. Our first one, our frequency, you go to the high end, and you that's where your cumulative frequency dot is going to go. So we have 8 and then we have 11. So you can see that at the 2 hours and 28 minutes, which is right here, we have our dot of 8. So I went 8 for a cumulative frequency. Notice I'm counting by tens here. And then at 11, which is just above 10, we have our next one. And then we have, I don't remember what it was, 20 and then 31. So you're plotting all of those cumulative frequency points at the back end of that frequency. So I'm looking at all of these numbers right here, and that's where I'm plotting those points. And then the next thing, once you have all the points plotted, you start at 0 and you just make your curve. And that's your cumulative curve. So once we get the curve, the next thing we want to do is actually answer our questions. So part C is all of the questions. We're using the graph to estimate it. So again, let's go to, excuse me, this part that I've already done, and let's take a look at it. So the first part of C says to find the median. Well, we know the median is 50%, and there are 69 runners that we are talking about here. That's our total. And so 50% of that is 34 and a half. So what you do is you go to 34 and a half, which is kind of right here, and I just draw a dotted line straight over to my graph, and then I draw it straight down. And that's going to tell me roughly, this is an estimate, of what it's going to be. So we have around 153 minutes based on my graph. So that's around 2 hours and 23 minutes. So that means that 50% is at 50% of the data is below 223 and 50% of the data is above 223. The next problem, it's asking us to find, let's see what it actually says, the number of competitors